do you do? Hugo Munsterberg here. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of IO psychology? Yeah? You're welcome. I'm considered one of the fathers of IO psychology. In 1910, I wrote Psychology and Industrial Efficiency. It was all about hiring workers who suit their vocations. I talk about motivation, I talk about performance, worker retention, methods of increasing work efficiency, even marketing and advertising. The objective was really to outline a new science that intermediates between modern laboratory psychology and the problem of economics. Picking the right person for the job means developing tests that limit the subjectivity that you get with introspection. Instead, I wanted to use measurements of personality and intelligence to try to find the best possible job for each person. If I sound a little bit like Wilhelm Wundt, it's probably no coincidence, because I was one of his star pupils at the University of Leipzig. I even obtained my PhD under his supervision. It was in physiological psychology. Let's see, that was 1882, and I was born in 1863. I was 22. Actually, I continued on and got a medical degree 2 years after that. Got married too. Both my parents had died before I was 20, so that kind of turned me into a serious and focused person. But it wasn't long after the PhD and the medical degree that I met William James. We kept in contact, and in 1892, he offered me a 3-year term as a chair of the psychology lab at Harvard in the United States. I didn't even speak English. I learned quickly though, and soon my classes were pretty popular. I was even attracting students from James' class. My career at Harvard went very well, and I was affiliated with many organizations, including the American Psychological Association and the American Philosophical Association, president of both. This was about the time I was really involved with applying psychology, and this is where Wundt, unfortunately, Wundt and I were at opposite ends of the spectrum. He had no tolerance for applying psychology. On the other hand, I was interested in exploring its potential in the courtroom, with jury research, identifying how witnesses can have inaccurate recollections of what they saw. I developed ways of finding the right personalities to fit matching positions. One time, we were working with a telephone company to screen women who could best operate the switchboard. I know I'm usually accused of saying women should be at home, but this is a little different situation. But anyway, I digress. The management of the company wanted to check up on us to make sure we were delivering what we promised we could do. So they included a few seasoned switchboard applicants in the poll. They scored at the top of the list. So things were really going smoothly. I was a very grateful German American, but the mood soured when the attitudes of the Americans differed with those of the Germans, and I had to open my big mouth. Things got ugly. This was before World War I. Eventually, most of my colleagues disassociated from me, and at that point I was on the outs with the whole psychological establishment. But I remained at Harvard as a professor of experimental psychology and director of the psychological laboratory until my death in 1916. That was sudden. I was giving a lecture to my students, and I fell down dead right at the lectern. You know, the APA didn't even have the decency to publish my obituary, not a word, after I'd been president. I guess that goes to show how my pro-German comments had affected my reputation, but in the end, I guess you could say I started a huge movement with applied psychology. IO psychology, forensic psychology, even Wonder Woman. Alright, maybe I didn't invent Wonder Woman, but I was college mentor to a young William Moulton Marston, and he created Wonder Woman.